Good morning, Nathan Stout. How are you doing this morning, sir?
Oh, good morning, Bill. How are you doing today? I'm doing
Hey,
fine.
yeah, me too, sir. It's a great day to be together and uh, work with each other, work with our students. And today on this video, you and I do some other types of videos, advising adventures, and bring some light to those types of issues. Today, we're going to be talking about mental health. And part of our Let's Talk series, topics, tools, and tips. And today, our focus will be on suicide awareness. What about that topic is important to you, Nathan, in talking about suicide awareness?
Well, dealing with suicide, I'll share a personal story. I had a close relative of mine that committed suicide, and looking back over those topics, looking back over that time, I wish I'd saw the cues or the keys to kind of help them address those problems. And it's just a topic dealing in the military. I've had a lot of friends that have dealt with suicide as well. So it's just a really important topic. It's just something that really impacts a lot of people.
And one of the reasons that I'm interested in talking about it, in really all mental health issues, is that talking seems to be the key word in these things. As you said, when people, and probably I would go out on a limb to say most everyone has experienced an experience of suicide in the family, with friends, in the church. I mean, wherever you're connected, wherever you're networking, probably the experience of suicide has affected and impacted all of us. But it's a topic that a lot of people don't feel comfortable talking about, bringing up, because I think there's kind of that stigma or fear or a sense of being uncomfortable in addressing the issue. And all I want to do together with you today, Nathan, is just bring some things to light, and hopefully make it a little more comfortable, if you will, but make us more confident for sure, to be able to talk about this issue and things that can help us moving forward in identifying it, and helping others to identify it, and come up with some strategies and just understanding it a little more. So I think that's what our goal is today. But guess what?
There you go.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I guess, one of the things, the term committing suicide, that's a tough one. It feels like it's almost like a legal thing. It's like committing a crime. It's like committing a murder. And that kind of has a negative connotation of it in itself. So I like to kind of reframe. Reframe is a word that I like to use a lot, just to wrap our heads around a different way of understanding it. And part of reframing it is to understand that suicide and suicidal ideation, suicidal thoughts, suicidal thinking is a symptom. It's not a disorder. We don't diagnose people with suicide. It is a symptom of things, of disorders, of medical crises, and so we got to put that perception of what symptoms mean. So let me throw this one at you, Nathan. If you have a cough, if you have runny nose, if you have a fever, these are all symptoms. What are those symptoms of? What are some of the different disorders could you associate with those types of symptoms?
That's a really good question, Bill, because those symptoms could be anything from the common cold to COVID-19 as of now. So really going to see a doctor and really diagnosing what those symptoms means is really important.
Exactly. I mean, it could be something as allergies even. We talk about seasonal allergies in the fall. I'm allergic to ragweed, pollen, and so I will get a lot of those features. But in today's world, I have to first of all wonder if I have the virus, the COVID virus, because those symptoms mirror and are very much like the COVID virus. So we do need to take symptoms very seriously. We need to talk about those symptoms. Other disorders and really more catastrophic medical emergencies. Let's talk about heart attacks and strokes. Some people have those types of symptoms. They're not used to having them. They're not maybe even aware that these symptoms are really predicting, are really trying to get their awareness that, hey, something major is going on with your body here. It's trying to get your attention. But if we ignore those symptoms, that's when we end up with those catastrophic medical emergencies where we have folks who have the heart attacks and the strokes and things like that, because maybe they weren't aware of and talking about the symptoms that they were having. And again, all those types of medical catastrophes and catastrophic events that have touched our lives too. People that we know who had heart attacks and strokes and medical emergencies, hemorrhaging, sepsis, these types of things. So once again, we need to go back to the medical model of let's identify symptoms, talk about symptoms, and see where that takes us. So back to how can we frame the symptom of suicide, suicidal thinking, suicidal ideation? How do we frame that? And really, when you work with folks who've been there, who've been in that dark space, it's a sense of trying to end something. It's a sense of trying to end some type of pain. And we know that the pain can represent many different areas. It could be actual physical pain. People with a lot of pain disorders with back and neck and in different parts of the body and headaches and migraines and things like that. We know that pain is severe at times, and you just want it to end. You want it to go away. And so we try to treat the symptoms to make that go away. Same with the common cold, right? I mean, the things that we try to take to end some of that discomfort. You take antihistamines, you take cough medicine, you'll take things that'll make your throat feel better. So we try to treat the symptoms. So with the concept of suicide, for me, it's about people who just want some pain, whether it's emotional pain, whether it's physical pain, a combination of a lot of different types of pain that we can experience as human beings. We just want it to go away. And suicide is kind of that final attempt to end it, to end the pain. I just don't want to feel like this anymore. I don't want to live like this anymore. I just want it to go away. So that kind of resonates when we try to wrap our heads around how could people get to a point of wanting to end their life. It's because they've tried other ways of dealing with the pain and they can't find that resolve, that resolution, that fix. Does that resonate in the way of thinking, Nathan?
I mean, that's a really good concept to take into consideration. Like you said, suicide is just the symptom of something deeper, of that deeper pain, of that deeper issue, and they're just trying to end that pain or that discomfort that they're feeling at the moment. And it really changes your perspective on what you think about suicide and what suicide really is.
We kind of, because we don't talk about suicide, there's kind of this mystical sense around what is it, what brings people to that point. And so what the goal is to demystify, that whole notion, that whole concept, so that it's not this thing that we can't understand, so therefore we avoid it. It's something that I think that we can understand. One of the things that I was reading recently, Nathan, that I wanted to bring up is that this is kind of a societal issue in Britain back in the 1950s. And it reinforces the notion that people, when they're hurting, when they have pain of different kinds and they just want it to end, we get to a point of impulse thinking, right? So we get this impulse or this notion of this is the way to end it. And if I get into that dark place and I have lack of judgment, if I've been using alcohol or drugs, which further impairs your judgment, And I think we get to a point where we act on those impulses. And we'll talk in a minute of people who survive those impulses. But this cultural event in Britain kind of helps drive home that point. So they heated their homes with coal gas. Now, Nathan Stout, what most people don't know about you and I is that we're brothers from the same state. We spent time in West Virginia together. And so we know about coal, don't we, sir?
Yes, sir. We definitely know about coal and coal stoves and everything else like that. Yes, sir.
All right. So with this coal gas, so that's how they heated their houses, cooked, things like that. And so with this coal gas comes a very toxic mixture that comes along with it. I actually was reading a book earlier this month about a guy who lived in Alaska and was trying to study the Eskimo and how they survive out there. And they almost perished because in their little igloo, they had coal gas to keep them warm, and the gas, almost caused asphyxiation, and they were able to get out in time and get over it. But anyway, it's very toxic. And so what happened is in these homes in Britain, and it almost is as if they had their own little suicide chamber in their house, right? So they actually called it sticking your head in the oven. So when people were in moments of despair, whether again if it was poverty that was causing economic pain and emotional pain, psychological pain, these types of things, what happened is because of this so easily exposed way to end life, because they had their own suicide chambers in their houses, that their suicide rate doubled very quickly. It went up when all this way of heating their houses, because when people were exposed to those impulses of, I just kind of want to end it right now, they'd stick their head in the oven, and the suicide rate jumped and doubled. And they were like, wow, that is amazing. So fast forward to 1970s, when they brought natural gas and different ways to heat homes and cook and things like that. And they took out these suicide chambers within the homes, this coal gas way of dealing with heating and cooking. The suicide rate dropped back down by a third. And it has pretty much remained that way. And so what I take from that is kind of that reinforcement that, when people get into that dark place mentally and emotionally, and they can't see a way out, there's this impulse. How does that help us? How do we use that to be aware and to treat? Well, again, we need to talk about symptoms. So we don't know that people might be getting to that place, that dark space, where there's limited options, unless we're talking about it, unless we're listening. And again, people feel crazy when they have those thoughts, and they don't want other people to think they're crazy. So they don't bring these ideas up that they're having in their heads. And then these impulses come about, and the combination of, I'm keeping it all inside, I'm keeping it all locked up. And then I have this impulse, and my judgment is impaired momentarily, and I make this decision. So the other thing that we can use as a coping tool when we're working with people is to say, hey, you know what? If you're prone to having those types of ideas, and I'm going to say this, if people were honest, I would say most everybody has had a moment in their lives where they contemplated not being here anymore. I mean, one of the biggest Christmas specials we have, is where a guy says, well, if I wasn't here, life would be better. And so, the rest of the movie is about what if his life didn't exist, and how would life be different? I think we've all been there. We've all had ideas about, would it just be easier not to be here? But folks who have those ideas frequently or often or of great concern, potentially bringing to that moment of action to the impulse, you need to remove things from your house. You need to make your house safer. So people who are prone to perhaps suicidal ideation, that's not a place to keep a lot of guns around the house. It's not a place to keep extra pills around the house. sharp tools to cut oneself with. So again, the awareness of, I get into this place where there's an impulse that's probably going to follow. I need to remove the things that when that impulse comes, that I might use to act against it. Makes sense, Nathan?
Absolutely does, Bill. I mean, like you were saying, just taking away those lethal means out of those homes, so that people won't act on those impulses, especially like a firearm or something like that nature, where if they acted on that impulse, it could result in a tragedy.
One of my personal stories, and I've worked a lot with in the clinical field with people who have suicidal ideation and had suicidal attempts and things like that. But this was closer to home. Literally, had a neighbor who had a history of family suicide, and he dealt with a lot of pain on a physical level, and then depression and anxiety and things like that. And he had guns in his house, and there would be shooting. He'd shoot turtles in his pond, and shoot things that were getting in his yard, other creatures or whatever. And one night I heard a gunshot, and I said, "That's kind of odd." He usually doesn't shoot during the day. I mean, he usually shoots during the day, not at night. And this was an evening shot, and so I thought, well, okay. And then a little bit later was another shot, and I said, "What in the world is he doing?" It wasn't long after the ambulances and police cars, state police cars, and everything were rolling up, and he had ended his life with a shotgun. And again, in hindsight, I wish he would have reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm having some of these thoughts. I'm in a very dark place," and that doesn't happen a lot of times where people reach out and let you know about those things. But secondly, just to say, hey, look, for you, having firearms in the house is probably not a good idea. I mean, it's just not a good idea if there's a family history of that, and you get into those places, those dark places, and having those impulses. Not good to have firearms around. And again, it kind of drives home the point. Another issue to talk about are folks that have had those suicidal thoughts that led to suicidal behaviors, acting upon it, giving into the impulses. People do survive that. And what research tells us is that the people who do survive that, in most cases, majority of cases, realize at the moment that whatever it was, whether they were jumping from a bridge or pulling a trigger or cutting with a knife or swallowing pills, is that at the moment that they did it, they realized, I wish I wouldn't have done that. I really don't want to die. I had this impulse and I acted on it. Now that I've acted on it, I just realized that I didn't want to die. And so thankfully, people who've made those attempts on ending their life have survived it. And with that realization, that notion of, wow, I actually tried to end it. It didn't work. And boy, I'm glad it didn't work, because I just realized that I wanted to live. I wanted to continue to work on getting through the troubles, the challenges, the pain, whatever it is, the crises in my life. I want to continue to try to work on that and get better and get through it and build new ways to live life and address its challenges. So that's, again, that's reassuring and reinforcing to us that, people, we have a hard-baked, hardwired, innate desire and will to live, to survive, to continue on. And we need to use that, as a tool, for healing and coping and dealing. All right, so Nathan, let's do some common myths and realities about suicidal ideation, behavior. We've talked about several things. We'll come back and tie it up in a bow, but let's do some myths and realities again, because we want to demystify this topic. We want to make it something that we can address with more confidence and understanding that talking about it is actually a coping mechanism and one way to bring the preventive measures to the topic. So, myth or reality, Nathan Stout, if somebody really wants to die by suicide, there is nothing you can do about it. Myth or reality in your mind?
Actually, that's a myth in my mind, Bill.
Yeah, I guess we've kind of just brought that out. And there'll be those that say, hey, if somebody's going to do it, they're going to do it. You can't stop it from happening. So let's, and it's like, no, that is definitely a myth. Again, a lot of people are going to have these thoughts, but those thoughts don't have to manifest into a reality. Those impulses that follow thoughts do not have to be acted upon. There's ways to talk about it, and just the understanding that, hey, this impulse, it's going to go away. It's a momentary impulse, and like any impulse to do something destructive or harmful can go away. So, myth or reality, Mr. Stout? Making one form of suicide less convenient does not usually lead people to find another method. Some people will, but the overwhelming majority will not.
I believe that's true.
Yes, sir. Based on what we talked about, if you want to elaborate on that, sir, feel free to.
We were talking about once you take away those lethal methods from a person's home or from a person's surroundings, and it just makes that that possibility of kind of going forth, or going forth or acting on those impulses more. And like you said, inside of us we have a will to live, and just by taking away those lethal means and by addressing it and talking to it, that will to live usually comes forth.
Absolutely. So again, 85 to 90% of people who survive a suicide attempt do not go on to die by suicide later. Is that a reality, myth? What's your thoughts on that one?
We talked about that too. That's a reality as well. Kind of goes back to that same conversation. Once a person is fortunate enough to survive a suicide attempt, then they realized that they really wanted to live. They just wanted to address the symptom and really, hopefully at that time, get the help that they need to address the bigger issue or the bigger concern.
So some of the research that is behind what we're talking about, Nathan, is people who've actually lived out in San Francisco, Golden Gate Bridge. That attracts people. It's kind of like we talked about the coal gas ovens kind of being a chamber for suicide. These types of bridges seem to be an attraction for those who are having the suicidal ideation and thinking of using that, as the tool to act on their impulses. So the folks who've actually talked to the survivors, people do survive those jumps. Miraculous. I mean, it's like, how in the world? But thankfully, many have survived. And so after interviewing, these people, they were the ones that said, hey, you know what? While I was dropping in air, I was realizing I wish I wouldn't have done that. I really don't want to die. And that these people have gone on to really be advocates for talking about depression and anxiety and suicidal ideation, and are telling their stories to help others, to make a difference, to help people understand, bring awareness, and develop the coping skills and mechanisms when they do get into those dark places. The research certainly reinforces, what the points that we're trying to bring home today. So myth or reality, Mr. Stout, asking about suicide. In other words, asking people, have you ever had suicidal thoughts or thinking? could this lead someone to actually taking their life? Could talking about it make them do it?
That's actually false. It's good to ask the question. It's good to ask that hard question. If a person shows signs that they could be suicidal, and you're dealing with that person, it's good just to ask the question plainly. Or have you thought about um, uh, taking your life? Or have you thought about committing suicide? Or have you thought about doing any of these things or hurting yourself? And that just opens that door for them to talk about it, talk about their feelings.
Definitely, Nathan. And so someone experiencing suicidal ideation or intent, since we're talking about it, we're asking them. So it must be taken seriously, and at times referred to clinical providers who can further evaluate his or her condition and provide treatment as appropriate. Myth or reality, sir?
That's a reality as well. If they're talking about suicide or they're making ideations, we do have to take them seriously so that we can get them the proper treatment that's needed.
And that treatment is out there, and it doesn't take a mental health professional to refer to those things. If nothing else, a call to 911 begins treatment, begins intervention, begins doing something about it. And so, if you're talking with someone and you really find that they are at risk for harming themselves, if you know nothing else, then you dial 911 and they will get you to the professionals that will help. You and I know that in our community here, we have RHA that will do health risk assessments, and they'll come out and do it right on the spot. They'll come here to the campus. They'll meet anybody, anywhere, at any time to do these risk assessments and to help somebody in that situation get immediate treatment if possible, if necessary, and at least if it's not to the point, offer the resources that are out there to help people who are dealing with this symptom of suicidal ideation, which again is indicative of something a little deeper and on the medical model, and that would be major depression or other mental health disorders that suicidal ideation is a symptom of. So one more for you, Mr. Stout. Many individuals who die by suicide or attempt suicide have given some clue or warning. Someone who talks about suicide provides others with an opportunity to intervene before suicidal behaviors occur. Thoughts about that, sir?
I believe that's true as well. Usually there's some sign, for the most part, when people are contemplating suicide, and it's just being able to identify those signs is really important.
And sometimes, Nathan, the signs aren't verbal, right? I mean, sometimes people aren't verbally bringing that out and saying, I'm having this. And this is if you know somebody well and you know that they're no longer doing the normal routines and patterns that they normally do. They seem more detached. They aren't engaging in life and in relationships the way they normally do. You see them giving lots of things away. Just talking about things that make you think, wait a minute, are they going somewhere? Are they moving? I mean, what are they, what are they trying to say? So sometimes we have to look for signs and symptoms that aren't necessarily verbal, but can give us those clues and cues about it. Kelly, our part-time counselor here at the college, shared with you and I an article recently and talk about the military. Sometimes that people don't give those verbal clues, and we say we didn't know because they didn't say anything, and so we have to understand that. And it also reinforces the need to have those conversations with people, to talk about it. I think the consensus in the military, and you served our country, my friend, so you can talk more about this. But some of the taboos in the military is, hey, look, I can't talk about mental health issues because it could affect my job, my career, and what I'm doing in the military. So that taboo just reinforces that we got to be quiet about this. I can't really talk about this because these, negative consequences can occur. Can you elaborate a little more on that about the military side of it?
Absolutely. I know when I served for about 20 years, and in the beginning, talking about suicide was a taboo subject. It's gotten a lot better because they realized the importance of addressing that issue. But I think also a lot of times it's just that feeling that we can always take care of things ourselves, that we try to hold in things ourselves, and we're not open to ask for help. You serve in a brand, an occupation where you try to rely on yourself and try to fix things yourself. And the biggest things is, if you're having these thoughts, if you're having these issues, is to ask for help. It's nothing taboo about asking for help.
Absolutely, sir. And especially for people of strong character who don't like to ask for help, it's like, I should be able to figure this out myself and handle this myself. Those are the ones that particularly need to overcome those taboos and open up and say, you know what, I don't have all the answers. I'm not always this happy or this confident. I do have weaknesses, cracks in my armor, if you will, and begin to talk about those types of things. So, well, you and I, when we do these talks, we always try to keep it at 30 minutes, and I see we're already there because we don't want people to turn these things off, but we know that people have other things in their lives to get to. So we'll just take a minute to kind of wrap it up. Kelly, the counselor that we talked about, she's going to add some other videos to this, links to resources and things like that that could be helpful to people. But the one thing we wanted to share is take 5. Just leave this thought with people. Take 5 steps for suicide awareness prevention, and that is learn the signs. We've kind of talked about that. Listening to people's words, observing people's behaviors, and just knowing, hey, look, do I need to start asking some more intense questions, intrusive questions, to see what may be going on here, something that may need some attention. Knowing how to help. Again, there are resources out there. A lot of times just listening, we don't have to have the answers. When somebody is talking about, these dark places and all these things that are going on in their life, we don't have to have the answers to help them solve the problem. We just need to listen and encourage and really confirm that, hey, you got some things going on right now that need some attention, and you might need some help. And it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to receive help. Practicing self-care, again, we got to take care of ourselves as we help other people. We talk about the frontline people taking care of everybody else. Well, you got to take care of yourself. You got to take care of your health, physically and mentally, as well as emotionally. And then, of course, reaching out and spreading the word. Again, not being afraid to talk about mental health issues, not being afraid to talk about the symptoms that come along with stress. And again, I promise you, all of us living in today's world, everybody jokes about 2020. We need a reboot. We need a mulligan. We need to, 2020 has just been crazy. We're all living 2020, man. We're all dealing with the stressors of it. And we need to spread the word that mental health is one critical component of the medical model, because the head and the body are connected. So when the body is having some malfunctions, it's going to mess with the head. And when the head's having some malfunctions, that's going to mess with the body. So there are signs and symptoms out there that we need to know how to identify, that we need to know how to express and discuss, and then bring light to it, and try to help people get through difficult times.
Absolutely.
What's some remaining words that you have, Mr. Stout?
I just think the main thing is don't be afraid to ask for help. Like we were saying earlier, for those that may be thinking about suicide or contemplating suicide or have some type of suicidal ideation, ask for help. It's nothing wrong with asking for help, and you don't want to take the symptom of something deeper like suicide and have an impulsive act on it and not and regret it, obviously, and cause harm to yourself and to your loved ones.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Stout, for being my brother, for being my colleague, for caring about people here on campus at Craven Community College. We want to continue to bring light to topics that not always people are comfortable in talking about, but just that we're concerned holistically about everyone's success, not only academically, but in life's challenges and struggles. So we'll continue to talk about these things, and I appreciate you being part of that conversation, Mr. Stout.
And I appreciate you, Bill, for being the lead on all these topics, because like you said, we want to help people holistically. So we just want to help them mind, body, and soul.
All right. Folks, thank you for spending time with us. Again, there's resources out there. Let us know how we can be of assistance. Have a great day, and we'll see you for the next Let's Talk topic. Take care now.